This is American Cemetery Live. Ashlyn, hello.
Hey Tom, how are you?
I'm great. We don't have a big chat between us this morning because we were both all over the place. You were in Southern California, you were at Dead Talks, you were in Atlanta recently. Um, you've been just, what she does, folks, is go around and try to make cemeteries better. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say, it's almost like I'm the real life Carmen Sandiego. Where in the world am I and who am I trying to help? And the answer is everyone.
Well, I was out on the road myself. We hear stories all the time about cemeteries that have fallen into disrepair. I was on a webinar the other day with a group in Richmond, Virginia, that is working to recover some African American cemeteries that were basically abandoned. My question to you is, how much should you care if your cemetery is thriving? And, to me, it's important because no matter what your cemetery situation is, if any cemetery is disrespected, it kind of hurts us all.
Sure, you should care because we're only as strong as our weakest link. And if you've ever met with a cemetery family and tried to show property, they're going to ask you how you aren't going to end up like that. So if you have tips, tricks, or otherwise for other cemeteries or can lend a hand, you should, and you should care because it's a reflection of you also.
The cemeteries that are mismanaged or whatever do end up on the news. And so people do see that, like you said.
They do see it. But with Tom, with that being said, what I am interested to hear about is you doing a little bit of your own detective work here recently in cemeteries.
Yes, it's true. I did a little Perry Mason work up in British Columbia. I was looking for this prison cemetery. The internet was not very helpful with its exact location. So I knew it was near a place I'd written about, but that had its own kind of grim story. The cemetery that was basically lost and recovered piece by piece and turned into a beautiful monument now. So I was trying to find this other cemetery, and it kept leading me to that first cemetery. But on the way, I found a third cemetery of note. Hint, hint. Perry Mason is your clue. But before that, you had a nice chat in my old haunts of Peachtree Corners, Georgia, with Mr. Ryan George, talking about just the kind of thing we're trying to do here, which is engage people with video and online content.
Absolutely. And small world that you used to live there. Actually, Ryan came to us with a recruiting background. And so imagine his surprise learning all things that went into pre-need sales. I said to him one day on a visit, let's go in the casket showroom and make a video. And he was a little bit thrown off at first, but now he's so into it and makes one weekly. And doesn't it make sense that people might want to learn a little bit about who you are, what you look like, and what you do before they take a call from you or make an appointment with you. So I think it's brilliant, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, and it's not very hard, as you and I have proven, because check this out. This is a video Ashlyn shot down there in Georgia, and then you follow it up with chasing me around British Columbia looking for cemeteries. And we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn Goodman, Director of Cemetery Solutions for Security National, and today I'm with a very special guest. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
That'd be great. My name is Ryan George. I am a pre-need specialist here at Crowell Brothers Funeral Home and Peachtree Memorial Park Cemetery.
And Ryan, you've recently started incorporating some videos on pre-need into your social media profiles. How has that been going?
It's been wonderful. People have been responding well. They've been engaging with me, even from across state lines, saying that what I'm doing is putting a little bit of life into cemetery work, if you will.
Well, with that being said, Ryan, what do you think people think about when they hear the word cemetery?
There's going to be a spooky tree someplace. There's going to be lots of cobwebs. There's going to be about 3.5 foot tall cross stone heads. And that is not at all what our cemetery looks like. And so whenever I take these videos, one of the things I'm trying to do is not just have some fun with funerals, but also just lean in and show there's some life to be had in what we're doing.
Absolutely. And today at Peachtree, this is a beautiful cemetery. How do you make sure that you are portraying both the history and the beauty of this cemetery in your videos?
Yeah. So here outside of Atlanta, we have rolling hills. We have 17 plus acres. We have the house that the Kroll brothers grew up in. We have the farm barn that was still standing from when all this was dairy farm. So to ignore all that history, I think would be a great injustice. But a fun part of it is it allows me to come around and show the historical connections that you're probably not just going to get from viewing our website.
Yeah. There are just some things that have to be done in person, and video, of course, is a great way to connect with people. So if you are looking to enhance your social media presence or even add video into your social media presence, consider this your sign to reach out to Ryan, or just do it. Like Nike said, just do it.
What's the worst that could happen? You end up with more friends.
All right. See you guys later.
Goodbye.
Hello, I'm in beautiful New Westminster, British Columbia, about a half hour, 45 minutes north of the Washington state border. Walking along, look at this. A nice neighborhood of well-appointed modern apartment buildings and houses. But there's a bit of a nexus of lost and hidden cemeteries here. Now, I'm in search of a hidden cemetery, and what my GPS keeps leading me to is a lost cemetery. This is Woodlands Memorial Garden, on the site of an institution that opened in 1878 under the name Provincial Lunatic Asylum. Later, they softened the name to the equally insensitive Provincial Hospital for the Insane. Later, it became known as Woodlands School. Woodlands housed primarily children, physically and developmentally disabled, or some people just dropped off kids that they didn't want. It was infamous for the abuse and overcrowded, physical, sexual abuse. But it wasn't enough that they were abused in their lifetimes. Many of them experienced the abuse beyond the grave, as this area here that I'm standing in was once a cemetery. Woodlands, it closed in 1996, after which survivors began to speak out. And in 2004, a government report came out, gave out some of the brutal details. In 2011, it was torn down and redevelopment began. But there was a matter of a cemetery that had been here on 2 acres and basically forgotten. Over 3,200 grave markers were removed or lost. Some were found used for patios or stacked in sheds. A design company called Lees and Associates, which is here in Canada but also operates in the US, they specialize in some amazing cemetery designs. They built this using the grave markers you see here. Here you see some grave marker pieces that people have brought. The centerpiece is this sculpture called A Window Too High, which is a symbol of the children who were too little to see out the windows of the institution in which they were trapped. Now, you can read that whole story in our July issue from last year or elsewhere, but while researching it, I learned there was another cemetery around here. That's the BC Penitentiary Cemetery, which also opened in 1878, a great year for terrifying institutions. The pen lasted 100 years, also had overcrowding issues. Much of the penitentiary was wiped out except for a few buildings. But what of the cemetery that used to be here? See, the problem is when I GPSed it, it ended up back here at Woodlands. So I thought the GPS thought this is what I was looking for by this big apartment building. So I did the old drive a bit and re-entered into my GPS, and it took me off a couple miles down the hill. What's that? There's another cemetery. No, that's not the BC Penitentiary Cemetery. Check that one out later. And here I found some evidence of the prison, that you could see this building, the word jail, some parts of the prison now offices. And I found this park
Talked to a local lady, and she told me she'd heard about the cemetery but had never found it, and she assumed she'd walked over it many times without knowing at some point. So I ventured up into the park, and now when I GPSed it, it said I had a 2-mile walk going back up where I came from by Woodlands.
I know that tall
and that
building.
tall apartment building visible up there. I needed to go and check out behind that apartment building. Once back there, look, they're really not interested in letting you know where this is. Here's a sign pointing out various locations, including Woodlands behind me, but not the penitentiary cemetery, which is, here it is. Now, this cemetery dates to 1914. The denizens here are criminals, maybe not the best of the best, so they only have their prisoner numbers on their stones. At least they mow the grass and keep it neat, but it's very basic. Just numbers. And they're kind of hidden that way all the way up. And what about that cemetery I passed along the way? Well, I looked it up to see its story.
BC Penitentiary Cemetery. Check that one out later.
It's called the Fraser Cemetery. After all my detective work, who is perhaps the most famous person buried here? TV's most famous iteration of the Earl Stanley Gardner character, Mr. Raymond Burr, Perry Mason himself. Burr also played Ironside on TV. He was in a lot of big movies like Hitchcock's Rear Window. He had a large private service when he died in Pasadena, California. But here he rests in the town in which he was born. He died in September of 1993, and here he is alongside his family. And those are some of the cemeteries around you. We'll see you next time on American Cemetery Live.